Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People remains one of the most influential self-development books of all time. Written in 1936, it distilled the psychology of human relations into a practical manual that still shapes communication, leadership, and persuasion today. The book's wisdom endures because it is not about tricks or manipulation, but about understanding human nature and learning how to interact with people in ways that make both sides feel valued and respected. Carnegie's lessons are divided into 4 major parts, each dealing with a key element of influence and personal effectiveness. Part 1, titled Fundamental Techniques in Handling People, lays the foundation for the entire book. Carnegie begins with the observation that dealing with people successfully is one of the greatest challenges in life, because human beings are primarily driven by emotions, pride, and the desire to feel important. The first principle he introduces is simple yet profound. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Criticism, he argues, is futile because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes them strive to justify themselves. Even if your criticism is correct, it rarely inspires positive change. People crave approval, not condemnation. Carnegie illustrates this idea through the example of notorious gangster Al Capone, who saw himself not as a villain, but as a misunderstood benefactor. This demonstrates that people rationalize their behavior, even when it seems indefensible. Instead of condemning, Carnegie advises understanding the motives behind others' actions. When you replace judgment with empathy, you open the door to cooperation instead of hostility. The second principle of Part 1 is give honest and sincere appreciation. Carnegie explains that one of the most powerful human desires is the need to feel important and valued. While money and status matter, emotional recognition matters more. He warns against insincere flattery, which people can easily detect. Genuine appreciation, however, has transformative power. When you recognize someone's effort sincerely, you lift their spirits and increase their willingness to cooperate. Carnegie cites industrialist Charles Schwab, who credited much of his success to his ability to motivate others through encouragement rather than criticism. Schwab said he believed in praising loudly and criticizing softly. Honest appreciation makes others feel significant and fuels loyalty far more than material reward. The third principle is arouse in the other person an eager want. Carnegie emphasizes that influence begins when we stop thinking about what we want and start thinking about what others want. Every person listens to the same radio station, YIFM, which stands for What's in it for me? To persuade, align your request with the other person's desires and interests. For instance, a salesman is more effective when he shows how his product benefits the customer, not when he merely describes its features. Carnegie's point is timeless. People are motivated not by your goals but by their own self-interest. Understanding this reality allows you to guide their behavior without conflict. These 3 principles form the philosophical core of the book. People respond positively to respect, understanding, and appreciation, not to criticism or force. Part 2, 6 Ways to Make People Like You, explores the social side of influence. Carnegie insists that likability is not a matter of charm or social status, but of genuine interest in others. The first principle is become genuinely interested in other people. Most people are absorbed in their own concerns. Therefore, taking genuine interest in others immediately sets you apart. Carnegie recounts how Theodore Roosevelt would read up on the interests of anyone he was about to meet, from cowboys to diplomats. His sincerity made people feel respected and valued. True interest cannot be faked. It must come from real curiosity about others' experiences. The second principle is smile. Though simple, Carnegie calls a smile one of the most powerful tools in human relations. A warm smile expresses goodwill without words, instantly reducing tension and building trust. He argues that a smile is a messenger of kindness and a universal language of friendliness. Even when life feels difficult, practicing a genuine smile can shift both your mood and the tone of your interactions. It costs nothing but yields enormous returns. The third principle is, remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest sound in any language. A name carries identity and emotional importance. Using someone's name with respect makes them feel acknowledged as an individual. Forgetting or mispronouncing a name signals disinterest. Carnegie tells of business leaders who made fortunes by remembering names and using them thoughtfully. Such attention creates instant connection because it appeals directly to a person's sense of individuality. The fourth principle is, be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Most people hunger for attention and understanding. Carnegie writes that being an attentive listener is one of the easiest yet rarest ways to make friends. Instead of trying to impress others with stories or opinions, let them speak. Ask questions that show interest. People feel important when they are heard, and this emotional satisfaction builds powerful relationships. Listening actively allows you to learn valuable information and makes others naturally drawn to your presence. The fifth principle is talk in terms of the other person's interests. When you focus conversations on topics that fascinate the other person, they associate you with positive feelings. For example, if someone loves sailing, discuss the sea, not your own hobbies. This principle extends beyond casual talk. It applies to business and leadership as well. The more you align communication with the other person's interests, the more persuasive you become. The sixth principle is, make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely. Every person longs to feel significant. Carnegie warns that insincere compliments are manipulation, but genuine recognition nurtures trust and goodwill. When you treat people as though they matter, they rise to meet that belief. This principle encapsulates Carnegie's philosophy. Relationships thrive on sincerity, respect, and empathy. Part 3, titled, How to Win People to Your Way of Thinking, delves into persuasion. Carnegie begins with a warning. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Arguments rarely produce winners. They create bitterness. Even if you prove another person wrong logically, they remain unconvinced emotionally. Carnegie notes that resentment lingers long after logic fades. The better strategy is to avoid direct confrontation and guide people toward agreement subtly. The second principle is, show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say, "You're wrong." Those two words provoke instant defensiveness. People are emotionally attached to their beliefs. To influence them, allow them to save face. Instead of blunt correction, phrase your perspective as a question or suggestion. This keeps communication open. Carnegie recounts how gentle phrasing in disagreements often leads to cooperation rather than conflict. The third principle is, if you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. This approach disarms hostility. By taking responsibility before others accuse you, you gain credibility and respect. It shows confidence, humility, and integrity. People forgive quickly when you are transparent about your mistakes. Carnegie believes this trait strengthens character and deepens trust. The fourth principle is, begin in a friendly way. Aggression closes doors, but warmth opens them. Carnegie recounts how he once turned a hostile tax dispute into cooperation simply by greeting the official warmly instead of defensively. A friendly approach is not weakness. It is strategic goodwill. The fifth principle is get the other person saying yes immediately. When you begin conversations with points of agreement, you establish a psychological rhythm of cooperation. People tend to continue behaving consistently with their earlier responses. Starting with shared ground builds momentum for agreement on larger issues. The sixth principle is let the other person do a great deal of the talking. Influence works best when people feel ownership of the conversation. When they express their opinions freely, they are more likely to be persuaded later because they feel respected. Carnegie writes that good communicators listen more than they speak and guide others gently toward desired conclusions. The seventh principle is let the other person feel that the idea is theirs. People are more committed to ideas they believe they created. Carnegie encourages using questions and subtle suggestions to allow others to discover conclusions on their own. This creates cooperation without resistance. The eighth principle is try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Understanding does not require agreement, but it demonstrates respect. When you sincerely consider another's perspective, they become open to considering yours. Empathy builds trust faster than argument ever could. The ninth principle is be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. Everyone wants validation. When you acknowledge another's feelings, even if you disagree with their conclusions, you maintain connection. Sympathy diffuses hostility and makes people more receptive to new ideas. The 10th principle is, Appeal to the nobler motives. Carnegie argues that most people desire to think of themselves as fair and good. When you appeal to their higher values rather than selfish instincts, you inspire cooperation. This approach works because it reinforces people's positive self-image. The 11th principle is dramatize your ideas. To capture attention, make your message vivid. Carnegie observed that people respond to stories, visuals, and emotion far more than dry logic. In an age of constant noise, dramatization makes ideas memorable and compelling. The 12th and final principle in this section is throw down a challenge. Human beings are naturally competitive. When you frame a task as a challenge, you awaken ambition and pride. People strive to excel when they feel they are proving themselves. Many leaders, Carnegie notes, have inspired greatness not through authority but through challenge. Together, these 12 principles form a psychology of persuasion based on respect, empathy, and subtlety. They teach that the best way to win people to your way of thinking is not through dominance but through understanding and cooperation. Part 4. Be a leader. How to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment addresses leadership and influence within organizations and relationships. Carnegie defines leadership not as control, but as the ability to inspire willing cooperation. The first principle is begin with praise and honest appreciation. Starting feedback with recognition builds openness to improvement. People are more receptive when they feel valued. The second principle is call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. Instead of blunt criticism, use suggestion or humor. This protects the individual's dignity and maintains morale. Carnegie insists that tact is essential for leadership. Direct attacks damage motivation. The third principle is talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. This technique levels the relationship. When you admit your own flaws first, others are less defensive and more open to correction. It shows humility and credibility. The fourth principle is ask questions instead of giving direct orders. This encourages initiative. When people feel they have a choice, they cooperate willingly rather than under pressure. Questions engage the mind while commands trigger resistance. The fifth principle is, let the other person save face. Public embarrassment destroys trust. Allowing someone to preserve dignity even when wrong maintains long-term respect. Carnegie emphasizes that this principle is vital for managers, teachers, and parents alike. The sixth principle is, praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Recognition fuels progress. Encouragement, when sincere, transforms average effort into excellence. Carnegie advises being lavish with appreciation, but specific about what is being praised. The seventh principle is, give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. By expressing faith in someone's potential, you inspire them to rise to that image. When people feel trusted with responsibility, they rarely want to disappoint that trust. The eighth principle is, use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct. If you present mistakes as minor and solvable, people are motivated to improve. Framing challenges positively prevents discouragement. The ninth and final principle is, make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest. True leadership transforms duty into enthusiasm. When people understand how their actions benefit them or align with their values, they act willingly. Carnegie concludes that leadership rooted in empathy and respect outlasts authority rooted in fear. In the book's concluding reflections, Carnegie unites these lessons under a single philosophy. Human beings are not creatures of logic but of emotion, pride, and the desire for significance. To influence them, we must appeal to their sense of importance and goodness, rather than their fear or obligation. The methods he teaches are not manipulative. They are expressions of emotional intelligence and empathy. Whether you are a leader, a parent, a salesperson, or simply a friend, the key to success lies in making others feel valued and understood. Carnegie's advice remains timeless because it addresses the deepest human need, to be appreciated and respected. Carnegie's teachings, though born in the early 20th century, have only grown more relevant in the 21st. The essence of his work is human connection, and while technology has changed how we communicate, it has not changed why we communicate. People still crave appreciation, belonging, and understanding, whether in a boardroom, a video call, or a social media thread. In fact, as the pace of communication accelerates, the wisdom of slowing down to connect sincerely becomes even more valuable. Modern society is increasingly mediated by screens. We live in an age where many interactions are filtered through devices, and attention has become a form of currency. Social media encourages performance over authenticity, speed over sincerity, and reaction over reflection. Yet Carnegie's principles offer an antidote to these tendencies. The idea of giving honest and sincere appreciation translates today into recognizing others' contributions publicly, without ulterior motives. A simple, genuine acknowledgement in a professional setting, a thoughtful email, a meaningful comment, or a quiet word of thanks, cuts through digital noise. In a world where everyone competes for visibility, being the person who sees others clearly is a rare and powerful trait. The principle of don't criticize, condemn, or complain applies as strongly online as it does in personal life. The internet has magnified criticism, often rewarding outrage with attention. Yet Carnegie's insight holds: negativity rarely changes minds. It only hardens divisions. Whether in a workplace Slack discussion or a Twitter argument, criticism framed without empathy alienates more than it persuades. Constructive feedback delivered with respect and understanding still builds bridges where hostility burns them. Emotional restraint, one of Carnegie's key messages, becomes a form of digital maturity. Carnegie's idea of arouse in the other person an eager want aligns closely with what modern psychology calls user-centric thinking. In business, marketing, and design, success depends on understanding what people value. Carnegie's advice to frame ideas in terms of the other person's interests is echoed in customer experience strategies and leadership training worldwide. When companies craft their mission around serving customer needs, they embody the same principle Carnegie taught individuals. People respond to what benefits them, not to what benefits you. Likewise, the section 6 Ways to Make People Like You now reads as a blueprint for emotional intelligence in an age of automation. As artificial intelligence and digital communication expand, the ability to show genuine human empathy becomes a differentiating skill. Become genuinely interested in other people now means more than small talk. It means showing emotional curiosity even when communication happens through text, video, or virtual collaboration. Emotional intelligence, the awareness of one's own and others' emotions, has become one of the most sought-after professional traits. And Carnegie's work anticipated this by decades. The power of a smile in the digital world is metaphorical, but no less real. While we cannot smile through an email or a text, tone, warmth, and word choice create emotional equivalents. A positive tone of voice on a call, an encouraging message, or even a polite pause before responding can communicate empathy as effectively as a facial expression. In a time where miscommunication spreads easily, practicing deliberate positivity online is the modern equivalent of Carnegie's smile, a reminder that friendliness transcends medium. Remembering and using a person's name now extends beyond face-to-face meetings. In networking, customer service, and even automated systems, personalization makes people feel seen. Addressing someone by name in an email or recognizing their contribution in a group chat follows the same psychological principle Carnegie observed in person. Acknowledgement breeds goodwill. Technology should enhance personalization, not replace it. Being a good listener is perhaps the rarest and most vital skill in the modern attention economy. With constant notifications and fragmented focus, deep listening has become a lost art. Carnegie's call to encourage others to talk about themselves resonates with the modern concept of active listening. Listening not to reply, but to understand. In team dynamics, relationships, and negotiations, those who listen well uncover hidden needs and build trust that cannot be replicated through automation. Listening remains the ultimate human advantage. In a world dominated by noise, Carnegie's emphasis on talking in terms of the other person's interests also aligns with how great communicators thrive on social platforms. The most influential voices today, from business leaders to creators, succeed because they speak to shared values, not personal agendas. Whether through storytelling, branding, or leadership, the principle of framing your message around others' interests remains the foundation of influence. The idea of making the other person feel important and doing it sincerely is central to modern organizational culture. In the past, authority flowed top-down. Today, influence flows in all directions. Employees, customers, and communities expect respect, recognition, and authenticity. The companies and leaders that practice Carnegie's principles, celebrating achievements, empowering individuals, and fostering belonging, build trust in a cynical era. Modern leadership literature, from Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last to Brené Brown's Dare to Lead, echoes Carnegie's conviction that leadership rooted in empathy is the only sustainable kind. The third part of Carnegie's book, How to Win People to Your Way of Thinking, can almost be read as a guide for civil discourse in the age of polarization. The world today is divided along ideological, political, and social lines, often reinforced by echo chambers. Carnegie's principle that the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it offers timeless wisdom. Online debates often deteriorate into hostility, not because people are unwilling to reason, but because public argument threatens ego. Carnegie's approach, showing respect for the other person's opinions and never saying "you're wrong," becomes an act of emotional intelligence and strategic patience. The aim is not to silence disagreement but to preserve dialogue. Modern communication experts now call this approach nonviolent communication or persuasive empathy. The essence remains the same. Create a safe emotional environment for others to express themselves, then guide the conversation gently. Admitting your own mistakes quickly and emphatically, as Carnegie advised, still diffuses conflict faster than any defensive justification. In the digital world, where reputations can be destroyed by a single misstep, owning responsibility publicly is a mark of strength, not weakness. Carnegie's suggestion to begin in a friendly way translates perfectly into professional communication. Emails that open with warmth, negotiations that begin with shared goals, and feedback framed with empathy set the tone for productive outcomes. In contrast, hostility or sarcasm, so common online, erodes trust instantly. The psychology of starting with friendliness remains one of the most effective ways to build rapport in both personal and digital interactions. The idea of getting the other person saying yes immediately has modern parallels in behavioral economics and user experience design. Marketers and negotiators now understand that early, small agreements build momentum toward larger commitments, what psychologists call the yes ladder. Carnegie's intuitive understanding of this principle anticipated decades of behavioral research. Similarly, letting the other person do a great deal of the talking aligns with modern leadership coaching and mentoring. People are more committed to solutions they articulate themselves. In a workplace, allowing employees to express and refine their ideas creates ownership, which drives engagement far more effectively than directives. The principle of seeing things from the other person's point of view has become foundational in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Understanding different perspectives fosters psychological safety, the idea that people perform best when they feel heard and respected. Carnegie's philosophy anticipated what modern organizations now formalize through empathy training. Treating people with dignity and curiosity is not just moral, it's efficient. His idea of appealing to the nobler motives holds new significance in a world grappling with ethical business practices and social responsibility. Consumers expect companies and leaders to act with integrity. Appeals to greed or fear may produce short-term gain, but appeals to fairness, compassion, and shared purpose build long-term trust. Carnegie's faith in people's higher nature was not naive. It was practical. He understood that appealing to virtue elevates both sides. Even dramatizing ideas finds its echo in the storytelling culture of modern media. Today, influencers, brands, and leaders alike rely on narrative and emotional imagery to communicate meaning. Data alone persuades the mind, but story persuades the heart, precisely the dynamic Carnegie identified. And his principle of throwing down a challenge resonates deeply in motivational culture, where competition, gamification, and public accountability drive performance. People still respond to challenge with energy and pride. In the leadership principles of Part 4, Carnegie's advice feels almost prophetic when viewed through the lens of modern management. In an era that values psychological safety and servant leadership, the call to begin with praise and honest appreciation defines effective feedback. Neuroscience now confirms what Carnegie taught intuitively. Positive reinforcement strengthens learning and motivation far more than punishment. Constructive feedback begins with recognition, proceeds through empathy, and ends with empowerment, a formula he articulated long before leadership science caught up. Calling attention to people's mistakes indirectly finds a modern counterpart in coaching methodology. Feedback framed as observation rather than accusation promotes growth. Asking questions instead of giving direct orders has evolved into the modern leadership mantra of leading with inquiry. Managers who ask, "What do you think we should try?" create teams that think critically and independently, reflecting Carnegie's insight that influence thrives where autonomy exists. The principle of letting the other person save face resonates especially in globalized communication, where cultural sensitivity is crucial. In diverse workplaces, preserving dignity across hierarchies and backgrounds sustains trust. Similarly, giving the other person a fine reputation to live up to mirrors the modern psychological concept of the Pygmalion effect, when people perform better because of high expectations. Carnegie's wisdom anticipated that belief shapes behavior, and confidence in others inspires self-confidence in them. As modern economies shift toward knowledge and service industries, interpersonal skills have become central to professional success. Artificial intelligence may handle logic and data, but empathy, persuasion, and human understanding remain uniquely human. The soft skills Carnegie championed are now the hardest to automate. Companies invest millions in leadership development programs that, in essence, teach Carnegie's lessons: communicate clearly, appreciate others, admit faults, and lead with empathy. In personal life, these principles hold equal power. In friendships, relationships, and families, Carnegie's advice helps bridge misunderstandings. Choosing not to criticize, listening with patience, and validating others' emotions prevent countless conflicts. The same humility that wins clients also preserves marriages and friendships. His ideas remind us that emotional intelligence is not a corporate skill. It is a life skill. The modern world, despite its technological marvels, suffers from emotional disconnection. Depression, loneliness, and social fragmentation have increased in proportion to our connectivity. Carnegie's work offers a quiet counter-revolution, a return to kindness, attentiveness, and respect. His principles encourage us to slow down, observe, and appreciate others not for what they can do for us, but for who they are. The essence of influence is not manipulation, but understanding. The essence of friendship is not convenience, but sincerity. In the end, how to win friends and influence people is not just a manual for success. It is a philosophy of humanity. It teaches that influence is the art of aligning interests through empathy, leadership is the art of inspiring without commanding, and friendship is the art of making others feel significant. Carnegie's message, though rooted in the etiquette of a bygone era, transcends time because it touches something unchanging: the emotional architecture of human life. In modern times, where speed, efficiency, and algorithms dominate, his work reminds us that the deepest power lies in patience, empathy, and integrity. You cannot automate warmth. You cannot program sincerity. You cannot fake genuine respect. Carnegie's century-old wisdom becomes the most advanced technology of all, the technology of human connection. And as long as human beings value trust, respect, and belonging, the timeless laws he taught will remain the foundation of influence in every era to come. The enduring legacy of how to win friends and influence people lies in its simplicity. Its lessons apply to every era and culture, because they rest on unchanging aspects of human nature. The book reminds readers that technical skill or intelligence alone cannot build lasting influence. Interpersonal sensitivity and respect are equally vital. Carnegie's message is both moral and practical. Treat people well not as a tactic but as a philosophy of life. In doing so, you not only win friends and influence people, you also develop character, empathy, and leadership that stand the test of time.